GrowCFO is where finance leaders grow together. Join thousands of like-minded professionals using GrowCFO to access the combined knowledge and experience of the finance leader community. You can join us today, growcfo.net.
Hello and welcome to the GrowCFO Show. I'm your host, Kevin Appleby, and today I've got a guest with me who is from the world of non-profits, and I've really been wanting to talk to some finance leaders in non-profit organisations for quite a while on the show. So, Olaide Olunloyo, welcome to the GrowCFO Show.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thanks for having me. It really is an honor to join this conversation. And it's great, obviously coming from the non-profit world, it's great to be on the show.
So, Olaide, you are the finance leader in Jesus House. Tell me
I am.
about that.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I'll start from the premise of what Jesus House really is. So yes, I head up the finance function at Jesus House and another charity, because we've got a sister charity called Festival of Life. And so it's a whole finance group across the two organizations. Jesus House is a registered religious charity, but which also does quite a lot of work in the local community. We've been in Barnet for, I think, about 30 odd years. And so whilst it operates on a Sunday to Sunday as a religious charity, during the week, it's quite heavily involved in transforming its local community. So there are so many projects, from running a debt center to a local food bank, just trying to respond to the local needs, to giving out free hampers during Christmas to those who cannot afford a Christmas meal. Just working with the youth, those not in education, employment, or training in our local communities in the deprived areas, just trying to ensure that potentially we're able to touch those deprived areas and where the needs are really the highest within our local community. We also have hubs. So whilst we are mainly resident in Barnet, we are trying to expand by having hubs across different parts of London. And so we have our first hub in Greenwich, which also the aim really is, beyond meeting on a Sunday, to be able to meet the local needs within the Greenwich community. So that's Jesus House. It does quite a lot of work, the breadth, in terms of just trying to ensure that it is involved in transforming its local community.
Wow. And you said there's a second charity in the group.
Yes, that charity is called Festival of Life. It's a sister charity. It mainly operates on an events model where it runs all-night events. Basically, because it's a religious organization, the idea is that you can bring people who feel lost, broken, not even necessarily in that space, but anyone that just wants a space where they can be themselves, I guess, connect with other people. So it organizes those kind of all-night events that creates that safe space for people to come together. But it also does a lot of CSR work. So it works with partners with a homeless charity to also do things over Christmas, provide stuff for the homeless. We have a few corporate sponsors as well. And we actually do a bit of work abroad. So Jesus House does a lot of work in Brazil, for example, and in Nigeria. In Brazil, we've got a community center, we've got a halfway house for those who's just obviously trying to get reformed after going through the experience of maybe being in jail and all of that. And so the idea really behind both charities is to be real transformative agents in the society. So even for the members, the idea is that once you are connected with any of these charities, you can take that transformative spirit into your local environment and create change wherever you are. So that's what Jesus House does, and that's what Festival of Life as well does. The Festival of Life is a bit of a smaller scale, but doing amazing work with the homeless, also doing some work in Malawi. It's got a health center that it's built in Malawi. So the idea really is those areas where people have real needs, homelessness, poverty, food, healthcare, the youth where, they need change. We can create portals of change in those different areas, in a sense.
Wow. I can just feel the passion for this in your voice. But that's an interesting one, Olaide. As a senior finance leader, with the qualifications you've got, you could be working just about anywhere. So
yes,
why this?
So it's a very interesting question that you asked, Kevin, because obviously when I first started, so I went to uni, I studied accounting and taxation, and I graduated in the first class. And I remember that at the time I finished, I actually had an offer then, many years ago now, from KPMG. And I thought, okay, I eventually want to go into the corporate sector, but I want to spend, because I had come from Africa, and I think I had seen need in a real sense. And I always felt that I wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than me, something that was helping to drive change. So when I first came to Jesus House, it was my church. It wasn't necessarily the organization I worked for, but I could see the real change and the real drive for change. And so having finished uni, I then started to study for my professional exams. I thought, okay, rather than just going into the corporate world, I want to give my time in a sense, whilst before I qualify, to serve a mission that really serves something that was so dear to me. And that was my initial drive, coming to this space where I could see real transformative change, where I could see people that felt lost, felt like they had no hope, come into a space where their lives were turned around. And I felt like, you know what, this is something definitely much bigger than me that I want to be a part of. But I thought initially it was going to be for a short length of time. Just come in, do it, and then get into the corporate sector. It's been one of the most fulfilling periods of my life. Obviously, like in the nonprofit sector, I guess the pay scales are not the same as if you were working in the corporate sector. So it really depends on what's driving you. But I've come to realize that I really want to make a difference. I'm driven by purpose beyond money. Now, money is great because it serves, and even in the nonprofit sector, we need money to be able to meet the needs of our beneficiaries. But purpose is what gets me up every single day and keeps me going, even when things are really difficult. And I think that's why, despite the qualifications, and I've come to see as well now, obviously I'm doing a bit more outside. I've now got my personal foundation outside of this charity that is serving underprivileged children in Africa. It's prepared me for that. I feel like I really want my life, my legacy to be one that really makes a difference where it truly matters. And that's what's kept me on this journey in the nonprofit sector for so long.
Yeah. So non-profit sector, but finance is still very important within.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about how the charity is funded.
Right. So you're right. Finance is really important. I always say that it's finance itself, and looking at the finance function, it's the compass, because we need it. It doesn't just tell us how to move. It really tells us where to go because we need the money. Now, with the charities, we're funded mainly by donations. We're privileged to have a really strong member base across the world, not just in the United Kingdom. So whilst on a Sunday to Sunday basis, we probably have maybe over 1,000 people attend the services or the events that we have, because we have loads of conferences as well that help to develop people across different months in the year. We also have a huge member base across the world. So we have people in Qatar, people in Singapore, people in Nigeria, people in the United States. And so they are our primary funders. They fund what the charity does. But what we also do is we also funded by grants for specific projects. So when I was talking about what the charity does, I mentioned about a project we run in December. It's called the Christmas Lunch in Jesus. It's one where we give out about 3,500 hampers to families in local communities who would not ordinarily be able to afford a Christmas meal. Now that we've been funded by the local authorities, by the government, because there's a real need. So we have grants that come in to fund that. Poverty, trying to just improve the financial literacy base within our local community. We have grants as well sometimes that fund those specific projects. But in terms of the actual operational expenditure and our exposure, that is mainly funded by our regular member base. So we have consistent donors. We have some that give on a regular basis to specific projects, or just give ad hoc to fund the operational base.
Right. So think about those donors, Slade.
Yes.
How do you build trust across that donor base that you're taking their hard-earned money and it's all going to a worthwhile cause, the cause that they believe it's needed to go to?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for us at Jesus House, transparency is so key. We believe that for you to build the trust of donors and your funders, you need to be transparent and integrity as well. People need to know that their money is going towards the very purpose that they're giving the money to you for. So we are very open, we're very transparent, and we also try to ensure that we are constantly communicating integrity. We run something at Jesus House. We haven't done it for a couple of years, but we used to run it well every single year before COVID, which we called an annual report Sunday. And what we would do is we would literally open up all the finances of the organization to all of our members and produce a proper annual report. And in there, we are literally telling them what every pound they've given has gone towards. Obviously, yes, you can go onto the Charities Commission Company's House and download the accounts. They're there in the public domain. But sometimes their figures, they don't really tell you, because sometimes you need a picture, right, to actually see where the money. I think pictures, they tell you 1,000 words. They really give you a powerful view of what the organization has done with your money. Figures potentially can be there on paper, but actually seeing the real beneficiaries. So we take testimonials from the lives that have been touched. We literally produce a documentary and showcase it. It goes on our website. So that way people actually get a sense of, we can see where the money is going beyond being able to go onto a website to download the report. So I would say integrity. We are very, very hot on, if we say we are raising these funds for a specific purpose, we want the donors to see that it's gone towards that. And we communicate, because sometimes you can say it's going, but then if they don't know, they can never really tell. Communication, open lines, communicating back to them, reporting back, be it via the website, through a report, a Sunday where everything is shown. But that transparency, I think, is also very, very key. And what it's done over time is improve donor confidence. And they know that, yes, if you do come back to us to say that this is a real area of need, we're very happy to put our weight behind it, because we know that we'll see the results. So that's what we've tried to do over time. Ensure we're constantly communicating, try as much as possible, by God's grace, be people of integrity, and being transparent with where the funds are going, what it's doing, and impact reporting, ensuring that we are reporting on the impact so that it's clear and evident to all of the donors.
Yeah. So, Lade, you've got donors that are often giving you money for specific purposes, specific projects.
Yes.
Raising grants that, again, are for specific purposes and specific.
Yes.
I know from my dealing with the local charity that I acted as finance lead for, they need to keep separate restricted funds and unrestricted funds, and to report back to individual grant givers on what you've done with their money.
Yes.
That feels to me as though you must have some very, very complex financial systems to cope with all of that. How do you manage that?
So I guess that really is where tech comes in. So obviously our ERP system is set up to manage all of that. So we know that we have to ensure that our fund accounting is watertight. So when funds come in for a specific project, it's accounted for within that project. And then when the funds are also spent, it's requested out of that project so that you can run. We literally have a system where you can isolate and run a P&L on a specific project. So the restricted fund that has come in and what you've spent it on. And I think really, because that's where you need technology to enhance that. And what we've tried to do over time is invest in tech that I can ensure that we are able to manage those funds effectively in terms of reporting and managing that. It is complex, like you've rightly said, but I think that with the right setup and the right understanding. So even when we have new members of staff, we have to run them through all of that mechanism to understand the need to apply for the funds separately so that it's clear and evident what each fund is going towards and how it needs to be accounted for within our systems. So we've got a whole mechanism behind that and technology, and that's literally what our accounting system does for us in ensuring that we're able to track all of those restricted funds efficiently, and then also ensuring that they go towards the funds that they've been applied to. Now, there are times when, if we have a surplus, because there are times when we estimate that this is what we're going to spend on a specific project, we fundraise, probably exceeded the target, and we don't quite spend all of it, we then either go back to the donors, go back to the grant makers to say that we've got this excess. And most times we get the permission to then apply that to our unrestricted funding base so that that can then be applied to any part of the charity's operations until we do that. But we ensure that we've got that trail and it's clear and evident in our accounts how each fund has been applied to the specific project that the funds have been raised for.
Wow, and that really does involve clarity, does involve making sure everybody can see every number. And
Absolutely.
yes, that comes back to that trust with donors and trust with grant givers, that they are generally prepared to allow you to take that surplus and still use it. And my experience is I know a number of grant givers that if there was a position that you hadn't spent the grant, they'd be asking for the money back that you hadn't spent.
I mean, some do, to be fair, because it depends. So, and I guess it also depends on how much we're talking about. If it's a negligible amount, then I guess it's no problem to them. But you're absolutely right that some do ask. So we've had an instance where, and I guess this is where the clear reporting is very important. And once it was evident, we'd achieved the aims of the project. We had met the very targets that we set to achieve at the beginning. And there really was no need trying to find a way to just use up the excess funds. And they were happy to collect it back. We were also happy because we knew that actually the project has served its mission. We can report on its impact. And both ways we're happy. So it wasn't an issue at all to return the funds because we knew that we had really met what we set out to do.
Brilliant. Yeah. So what sort of role do you take when you're dealing with some of the grant funders? When you're looking for grants to support projects, what's the finance role in there? Do you get very involved in that process?
Quickly. So what has happened over time, it's evolved. We, at the moment in the organization, we don't have a fundraising team. We've just engaged a fundraising consultant, actually. So we're crafting, I guess, with this times, they're very uncertain times in the nonprofit sector with higher costs of living and still having to meet beneficiary needs. So you have to do more with less in a sense. And so we've engaged a consultant because we're trying to revise our whole fundraising strategy and just ensure that we're diversifying our income streams as much as possible. But with regards to the grants, what has happened over time is the role of finance has evolved. So we have a community team because we are quite heavily community focused. We have a team that is involved in all of the activities who traditionally would, I guess, apply for the grants, and then finance will get involved at the stage where figures are needed, accounts are needed, supporting figures are needed. But now we're crafting the strategy together because as finance, we realize that grants are they're a very important part of our funding base. We need, if we can free up a lot of our operational income to spend it where we can't get restricted funding and get grants to fund specific programs, it would really, really aid how we're delivering our programs. So now we are working more as business partners, ensuring that finance is on there from the first start. Finance is very involved in engaging the fundraising consultants, setting the strategy, looking at, what grants are we going for? What are the requirements? What areas do we have the most need that we can get grants to fund? So it's helping craft that strategy across the organization without being involved at the end of the project. So we're working very, very closely with program leads just to ensure that the budget also reflects the actual delivery, the conditions, the risks as well. We're working closely with legal to ensure that any potential risks are flagged as early as possible. And so we're involved in the entire mechanism, and even when the grant has been awarded, finance is very heavily involved as well in tracking the impact and just ensuring that we're able to report back effectively. The reporting schedules are met. So I think what it is now, as opposed to, I guess, a few years ago where finance was almost like a back office, just provide the data and keep working through the data. Now we are a typical part of the engine room. So we're giving shape to the intention and just ensuring that we are very involved in turning that proposals into performance in a sense. So I would say that now we are in the driver's seat and driving it along with project owners and our community action team.
Wow, which makes finance a very dynamic organization.
Indeed.
Yeah, and I guess you talked about reporting on some of those projects.
Yes.
It's not the making sure you've spent the money that's important, it's making sure you've got the right outcome. So does that involve finance in measuring a lot of KPIs that are perhaps not traditional finance ones?
I think so, because like you rightly said, it's not just obviously reporting on the fact that, okay, the project has been done, but it's because from the outset, the outcomes would have been clearly detailed. What are the outcomes that we want from this activity? And so that potentially also helps us to determine what our KPIs are in a sense. So we're tracking things that are potentially not, I guess, the norm. So even in terms of the grant delivery accuracy is something that is a metric that I think that we have to track. So it's not just we said we're going to spend this amount, we've stayed within budget, but these were the specific outcomes. This is what the grant was meant to deliver in terms of the change in lives. So we are actually also trying to measure the difference in the lives of the beneficiaries of the project, pre the project and post the project. And you find that a lot of that is actually measured through either the things that potentially might seem like, oh, you can't measure them, but you can. So sometimes I would hear things like, oh, you can't really measure the change in their mindset. But then I say to the team, actually, we can, because prior to this project, so for example, we have a project on financial literacy. And prior to them coming on, the mindset, the way that they felt about money, it was almost like a mentality of fear, not even knowing where to start. A lot of them didn't understand their figures. They wouldn't budget. They didn't even want to look at their bank accounts. Some of them wouldn't open letters because in their mind, it's a case of, oh, I don't know, it's a creditor chasing me. So whilst it's upskilling, financial literacy enhancement, you then find that at the end of the project, we can actually measure how the mindsets have changed, because you now suddenly see the same people that came in so fearful, not wanting to deal with their finances, speaking, now going on and taking a step, because the project delivers education. That's what it does at the basic level. But they've now taken steps beyond education to now engage with the debt management agency to say, okay, look, this is it. I want to create a plan to come out of debt. And what that says to us is that this is something that we potentially can measure the change in their attitudes to money, their money mindsets, and all of that. So whilst it might not be a traditional metric, the changes in the behaviors post some of this program delivery tells us that these are things that we can measure beyond just the facts and the figures in a sense.
So how would you report something like that back to, say, a grant issuer?
Yes.
Would that be purely anecdotal evidence, or would it be some sort of hard and fast measure that you would send back?
I think sometimes we'll send hard and fast measures, because what we'll then do is, so you have like a questionnaire pre the engagement, pre the project, which already helps us to analyze behaviors pre the delivery of the project. So we can tell where mindsets are, behaviors, patterns. And then we have one post, and that actually shows us. So you could have, how do you currently feel on a scale of 1 to 5, potentially? Tell us, do you feel fearful about money? If I just use it as a base example. So 5 being, I feel very fearful. 1 being, I don't feel as fearful when I think about money. And some of them could have 5 because they are really, really intimidated. Once they hear money, their hearts are beating fast. Post, we run the exact same survey. And suddenly somebody that was on a 5 suddenly feels more in control, and they're not a 1, i.e. they don't feel like they're there because they still have to go through a process of working through what the issues are. But they suddenly say to us, I'm a 3. Now you can quantify in percentage, what the difference between the 3 and the 5 is to report it as a percentage increase in terms of performance and optimization. And that literally, I think, is quantifiable. So we use those feelings, those behaviors, the data, the metrics before and post to actually determine where we've had an increase in positive outcomes. And we can actually quantify that. And so that gives us some hard and fact, obviously, reporting mechanisms that we can report back to the grant makers Beyond also, I guess, and there's some that might just be mere testimonials or feelings across in their time. Also, because you have ratings from the local authority on poverty level, say in certain communities, that you can also then go back and check what the ratings are post the delivery of your program. Obviously, sometimes it does take a long time because it has to be remeasured. But I think that it is possible to quantify them as long as we've got the right metrics in place. We use extensive reporting tools to gather the data and ensure that they are quantitative and we can actually report back on them.
Brilliant. So doing that reporting, does that tend to fall as a finance job?
It's mixed. So not fully finance, because a lot of times, so obviously finance is very involved in the strategy, the delivery, but what we find is we then have the community team as the hands and feet on ground in terms of actually delivering the project. We work with loads of volunteers as well who help to drive that. So they are potentially at the forefront a lot of times in terms of collecting the data. And then finance, along with the strategy team or the project owners, can then analyze that to ensure that we can then present the actual quantitative responses back to the grant makers. But in terms of the collection, we find that we are having to lean more on the front runners, those who are actually on ground delivering the projects.
Yeah. So, Lade, you're dealing with a lot of cash here.
Yes.
In a lot of money going out. Now, my experience with some grant givers is that you've got to spend the money and they'll come along and reimburse you afterwards. So in some cases, you're lucky enough to get it up front. So what's your approach to cash flow management?
So obviously for us, we have to focus our cash flow almost on a week in, week out basis. Like I said, we are funded by voluntary donors. And so on a week in, week out basis, we have to use simple dashboards just to highlight where we need reserves, what projects are upcoming, what do we need to fund, and all of that. Where can we hold off in this instance on non-essential spend until we get to the point where it's really it's essential, and also embed contingency planning in every funding agreement. Like you rightly said, I mean, for most of our grants, I think we've been fortunate enough to get them upfront. So that has really helped with the cash flow management. But in the instance where we then have to spend and reclaim it back, and sometimes it could take a few months before you do get the reimbursement. And so we have to operate a tight cash flow management system. We schedule our payments months and months in advance, ensuring that we are literally looking at our dashboard. What is our current status? What are the future obligations? Where can we readjust if need be? And I think that we also ensure that we're working with our program teams effectively so that it's all embedded into planning cycles, and it builds confidence across the organization that this really is cash in, cash out, but timing is also very key, and planning. So our annual planning cycle is also a major part of our cash flow management, because we're then looking at where do we actually fit major programs so that we can align them with what the dashboard is saying in terms of our cash flow. So I know some organizations do it monthly, but it's literally week in, week out, and making adjustments where necessary.
Yeah, I can imagine with so many projects going on, it does need to be week in, week out. You talked there about an annual planning cycle. Have you ever thought about doing that on a rolling basis?
So I would say that it actually ends up being on a rolling basis. Obviously, we've got the major plan on an annual cycle, so where we know what the plan is for the year, but we are constantly reviewing it. So you have those constant reviews, which I guess makes it a rolling cycle in a sense. And I guess the nonprofit sector is one that is very dynamic. You always have to be ready to respond to needs, to respond to how the economy is affecting beneficiaries. And sometimes you don't even have enough time to prepare, which means that we can have a hard planning cycle, but it's not hard coded, because we know that whilst yes, it looks good on paper, we have to be responsive to needs, and we have to ensure that we are lean and agile and just ready to take action. So that means that it's constantly being refined to ensure that it's meeting our charitable objectives, one of which is alleviate poverty. And sometimes you find that what that means differs from month to month in terms of the needs in the local community. So you always have to be ready to respond.
Yeah, which is why I asked the question about whether annual is the right thing, because it really is a dynamic
It
environment.
is.
We could sit down now and look at the next 12 months, but 3 months' time, that could have all shifted and we could
Yeah.
get a different plan.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I love what you said. I'll definitely take it back to my team as well, that actually we do call it an annual planning cycle, but maybe we need to be revisiting the term, because the truth is, whilst it's called an annual planning cycle, in principle, it doesn't really work like that. It's literally rolling from week to week, month to month.
So, Lade, you've been around Jesus' house now for quite a while. How's your role evolved over that period?
So I think obviously when I first started, I started at the point where we didn't even have processes, policies. So there was a lot to craft in the initial stages, to put in place, implement systems over time, build teams to then obviously have responsibility for specific aspects. So I would say that when I first started, it was very operational. But over time, and now being, I guess, the lead within finance in the organization, it's now much more strategic. So I've got a team that is fully on top of the operations, but my role is now not just actually reporting on numbers. Yes, whilst I have to do that, but actually helping and coming alongside the board to predict what the future potentially looks like. So a lot of forward planning, working with the board, working with senior management in terms of being a key driver in helping to deliver the objective. So there is a need to actually understand what our strategic objectives are year in, year out, and ensuring that our financial strategy is robust enough to aid its delivery. So it's now much more strategic, working with stakeholders within and outside the organization, building relationships, trying to see where we can collaborate. One of the key things I always say to my team now, that collaboration is a currency, and it is the currency for the future. And sometimes as non-profit organizations, we're very focused on, this is what we say we're about, this is our objectives, but we don't have to do it alone. So now I go out a lot more. I'm networking, engaging with other organizations, doing similar things, engaging with tech organizations. How can tech also help us to simplify and amplify what we're doing, make it easier, understanding that it is the way of the future, it is the language of the future. So I find that my role has really evolved now. I'm not really stuck behind a desk, just punching numbers now. I'm out there just trying to really understand the real needs and how our organization's doing it. What are the right alliances that we need to make? What are the right collaborations that we need to have just to ensure that we're strengthening our base? And also, how do we diversify our income streams? What other income streams are there that potentially? So it's really crafting that strategy. The truth is, it's real uncertain times within the sector. And so my role is also being able to lead in these times, also ensure that my team are well versed in what they're doing. And whilst it's a case of, okay, we're not quite sure what it looks like for the organization, but we see a vision and potentially it's helping people see what it can become and driving them through. So I would say that it's really, really evolved over time. I barely have time now to just sit punching numbers. Obviously, I have to work through reports. I have to ensure that I'm reporting back to the board. I'm working closely with the board. We're defining policies, strategies for the future, but it's also working as a real business partner within the organization.
Wow. And I can understand now why
Yeah.
you turned up just for a little while to begin with, and you've stuck around for a long, long time, because
Yes,
the tool
absolutely.
really has grown.
Yes.
So, Lade, you've been a member of GrowCFO for a
I
long
have.
time.
I have.
How's GrowCFO contributed to that journey?
Kevin, I have to say, and this is not because you're on the call, it's been really, really amazing. I think for me, a lot of the courses that you get advantage of by being a member of GrowCFO have really, really helped me. And just, it's grown me on my journey to the CFO route, expanded my leadership capabilities, communication, just being able to negotiate. They're just specific skills that I think that GrowCFO has really helped me develop on this journey, which I think every finance leader really should have. Because traditionally, finance has always been looked at, it may not necessarily have been, but looked at as a back office function. You're the people that pay the bills. You're the people that sort out the invoices. But what GrowCFO has helped me to see is what a real CFO function does beyond just sitting behind a desk and crunching numbers. It's the real value that you bring to an organization. So even within the nonprofit sector where I am, it's the value that I bring to the mission, to delivering the objectives of the charity. It's the boldness to negotiate. It's that confidence to communicate and communicate effectively and really understand. And just that ability to lead and lead with confidence are things that I have gained beyond. Obviously, I've gone on a few finance business partnering. I've also gone even with tech, the Power BI course. There's certain things that has also expanded even my ability to engage with technology. At times now I was having a chat with a friend and I was saying that I don't even know how we can survive now without AI. Like, it's literally everywhere you turn. But what it's doing, it's enhancing. It's also that ability to think beyond. There's the fear that, in a few years, would AI replace a lot of jobs? But actually, I'm saying to myself, I just need to expand my skills. I need to ensure that I'm constantly upskilling. And that is the mindset shift that I think GrowCFO has done for me. So even now, I go for a lot of networking events. I go for a lot of conferences and events, and I'm engaging with a lot of people in the corporate sector. But I'm not thinking that because I've come from nonprofit, actually, I can contribute, because yes, whilst we might be in different sectors, we're dealing with the same issues. We're trying to serve potentially the same missions, just in different ways. And that is what GrowCFO has done for me. It's really transformed my thinking. It's elevated my thinking. And it's given me a pathway for development, because I can see where I'm striving to get to. And there is a plan that is helping me to get there.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Now, Lade, you just sneakily, right at the beginning, mentioned something about your own foundation.
I did.
Tell me about that, please.
Yes, I have a foundation that was launched last year. It's called the Precious Seeds Foundation. It's an NGO registered in Nigeria. And so it was just a few years ago, I had come across, my friend owns an NGO as well. And I had said to her, obviously, I guess as you get older, you're thinking legacy. And I guess maybe also having been in the nonprofit sector for so long, you're thinking about legacy, impact, and all of that. And I had said to her that I'd like to support children who are underserved. They can't even afford basic education because their parents can't afford to send them to school. And so she had obviously put me in touch with the family. And on a personal level, we had started to support. But as I went there, as I engaged more with the family, I saw that the need was a lot. It was humongous. We needed, there are loads of amazing NGOs doing amazing work all over the world. And I thought I need a bit more structure. I need something that can really carry the weight of what we're trying to achieve. And so that NGO Precious Seeds Foundation was launched last year. And the ethos really is to be able to just take underserved children who are in slums from the slum and put them back into school. So those who the parents can afford to provide for their education. But beyond that is also to develop the wholesome child. It's not just chucking them in the school and forgetting about them. It's ensuring that mentally they're balanced, they have everything they need to develop into wholesome humans. And that potentially is what the foundation does. Earlier in the year, we partnered with another foundation and did free eye tests, because we found out that some of the kids are not doing well in school, not because they're not brilliant, but they can't see the boards. And so they're distracted. And so this foundation, bless them, came in, ran eye tests, provided glasses to those who needed it. And that's what I'm talking about, that collaboration, because we couldn't do the eye tests, but we could partner with another NGO that does eye tests. And I think that there is scope, I'll bring this back to the nonprofit sector. There is scope to deliver really meaningful work. Because we have loads of large organizations in the nonprofit sectors. We have those who are still on maybe the first tier, they're a lot smaller. But I think coming together and seeing where we have synergies can really help us deliver really meaningful work. and make an impact where it truly matters, particularly in this climate where people are really impacted by rising costs of living.
So your own foundation, that must put some pressure on your time when you've already got a full-time job.
It does.
How do you fit it all in?
So obviously, evenings, weekends, and I was trying to do it. And I also realized, Kevin, that I was trying to do it all by myself. But strategy really is understanding where you need help and bringing in the best help that you can to free up your time to focus on what really matters. And so obviously now I've got a virtual assistant who is literally running. So she would, if I call her the boss, because she would send me messages, you need to do this today, you need to do this tomorrow. What that's done for me is freed me up from a lot of the admin. So I have this person who understands the vision, who knows what we want to achieve within the foundation, and potentially is helping to drive that, but so I can operate at a strategic level. And because I'm doing strategy across my day job and across my foundation, there's a synergy there. So I don't feel, yes, it's time pressured. Sometimes I have to work late nights, I have to work weekends, but it's aligned with my purpose, with my passion. And so that just gives me the energy to keep going.
Wow. And I think if I was going to sum up this podcast, Olaide, it is purpose and passion.
Yes.
We started off talking about the purpose behind the charities in the group that you work for. We've talked about the purpose of the foundation you've set up, and all the way through, in every question I've asked you, the thing that has oozed out in gallons is your personal passion. Wow.
I guess it drives. I say to myself, and I think I'll probably just share this as well. I always love to have acronyms or things that potentially I can always refer to that help drive. So I think, yes, you're right. The personal passion. And I think I would say this to every finance leader within the nonprofit sector, because the truth is, if money is the key driver, it's not enough to sustain us, but we all need to thrive within the sector. And so I would say that transparency is a key thing for us. So I use the acronym THRIVE a lot within my work and engagement. And the T for me is transparency. I say we must build trust through numbers that tell the truth. People must see that those numbers are telling the truth. We have to have horizontal thinking where it's not just we're looking beyond, because if we're stuck in budgets, and that's what I've found over time, we can't lead with foresight, but we need to lead with foresight as leaders within finance in the nonprofit sector. Resilience is a key thing as well. A lot of times, there are times when I'm like, gosh, I don't even know how we're going to get through this. But design systems that they could bend from time to time, but they don't break. So that's where cash flow planning, reserve building, they're quite key. Integrity, I think, is another key thing I would say. We must let our values shape that valuation. Value creation, and that for me is a personal value I have, where I always say that every penny must serve a purpose and engagement. That's one thing I'm learning now. And that's another thing I think GrowCFO did from when I was talking about building confidence, because I'm quite introverted and I can just, if you leave me behind a computer, I can just keep crunching numbers. But I realized that engagement is quite key. We must lead beyond spreadsheets as finance leaders within the nonprofit sector. We must build those collaborations. I say it is a currency for the future. Finance functions, especially in nonprofits, must never be isolated. We must engage funders, engage teams, engage stakeholders, have co-ownership, have shared decision making, because I think that there is a lot we can achieve. There's a lot we can leverage. Yes, the personal passion, but it's also living by certain personal values that I've just shared that has just helped on this journey within the nonprofit sector. It's a whole mindset shift. And I think that in these times of uncertainty, finance leaders, we need to thrive so that we can lead our organizations, support with courage, with clarity. You mentioned clarity when you were talking, and lead with compassion.
Wow. So, Olaide, just take me through that again. Thrive. Teach me stuff.
Yeah, so the T is for transparency.
H is for?
Horizontal thinking, so expanding our minds.
I is for?
The R, thrive, is for resilience. The I is for integrity.
The V is?
Value creation.
And E is?
Engagement.
Wow. Lade, I could go on talking to you about this for the whole
could
rest
as
of
well.
the afternoon, but I've just looked at the clock and realised that we've probably way exceeded the normal length of a podcast episode.
Oh, wow.
Lade, thank you. Thank you so much
Kevin.
for being
Thank
this
you
week's guest.
so much.